Hello. Wait, do I have the chat? I don't have the chat. No. It's a disaster. It's also a disaster that I'm sick. Hello, Lynn. It's a disaster, man. Back at it again at the. Not sure what that means. Seriously, I'm dying, guys. I'm dying. Yeah, I'm. I don't know if y'all are sick of the game design trends, but I'm sick of the game design trends. Should have given it some space, you know. Should have given it a little space. I think I will save up the rest of the suggested trends for a future time. After this one, I mean, I'll save up the rest of the trends for a future date when it'll be feel a little more fresh. You gotta do the episodic streams. You gotta space them out more. But yeah, next week I'm gonna do. I think next week I'm gonna do something like ranking every game I've played in 2026, which will be fun. The game director / solo dev tier list. I saw. Is this related to what I saw on Backlogs? Let me see if I can find this. I saw on Backlogs someone made a game dev tier list. Have fun. Where's the link? Okay, I mean, just just look at this. Ain't no way, dog. Ain't no way. First of all, okay. Wait. Okay, the link is there 3 times. Never mind. I thought there were 3 links because like they all didn't fit in one tier list, and that had to be, and this was only going to be one of them. But yeah, that's the whole thing. But like, okay. First of all, I don't know who these people are. Actually, I probably do know a decent amount of them. I know Rand Miller, Raphael, Colantonio, Pixel, Peter Molyneux. I mean, I don't even recognize from the images. Like, what is this? This is some like, is this that Alice game? Is this Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines or something like that? Yeah, I mean, I know from this image. We got Michael Bro. I mean, look, but then the other thing about this is like I feel weird rating people, you know? like rating games is one thing. Rating games is like inevitable, but like rating people feels a little bit weird. Even if I specify at the beginning, like, you know, I'm rating their output, their artistic output to date. Like, I don't know, it still feels weird. Yeah. Funny though. I mean, Edmundo McMillan, is that? Surely that's not his name, right? Where is Sylvie? Great question. Where is Sylvie? Maybe it's got Sylvie's real name. No, probably just a snub. Probably just a huge failure on the part of the creator here. So many bangers this year. That's why we got to do it. We got to We got to do the halfway point in the year roundup. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how the top games shake up. You know, do I like Emurom more than Derelict Star? I don't know. I actually do know, but I'm not going to spoil it yet. But also the lower ranking ones. Like, do I like some random puzzle script game that I played that you've never heard of more than? Okay, well that's probably not interesting to you guys. Do I like do I like Oof more than Sylvie's Fruit Day or something? I don't know. We'll see. I've also played. I mean, it's not just going to be 2026 games. I played. What did I play? What's that rhythm game? Spin Rhythm XD. I played that. I don't know. Played a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I mean, you just don't for the more mainstream games on this list. You just don't hear. Shout out Cosmo D. How is Cosmo D on there and not Sylvie though? I mean, I guess most people would think Cosmo D is more noteworthy. Have Cosmo D games like sold well? I guess I do hear kind of a lot about his more recent ones, or their more recent ones. I don't know. I don't know the pronouns there. Sorry. Can't put someone in F tier. Yeah, I mean, is there someone we can put in F tier? Let's just go ahead and explore that idea. I'm sure a lot of people would put Jonathan Blow in F tier, right? Yo, shout out Jake Clover as well. Are there any developers who are problematic enough and bad enough at making games that we can just throw them into the F tier? Sure. Peter Molyneux. I don't know. I don't really play those types of games. Yeah, Caitlin with the same thought. I don't really play those types of games, so it's hard to say. I feel like I have positive feelings toward Peter Molyneux though for some reason. I'm out of the loop. I know he's like kind of problematic in some way. Um, yeah, I mean there sure are a lot of people here, including like a lot of lesser known indie developers. For Sylvie to not be included, I gotta say. Uh, I don't know. Japanese people, they have problematic views all the time. You can probably just throw a bunch of them in F tier. Okay, now we got to throw myself in F tier for saying that. That sounded pretty racist. Josh Sawyer, who's that? Oh, I've seen this guy. Fallout New Vegas. I feel like this guy's beloved, right? I don't know. I'm out of the loop. Out of the loop on RPGs of all kinds. Yeah. I think my sense with Peter Molyneux is just that he has crazy ideas and tries them, right? And so that makes me hesitate to put him in F tier. Oh, I guess there is no F tier. So maybe the creator of this tier list anticipated this problem. Anyway. Molyneux barely had anything to do with Fable 1 Beyond marketing. Interesting. It seems like the type of thing that could be true. Also seems like the type of thing that could be false. Okay, I think we got to get into this because okay, I disagree. Hang on, I disagree with that. Should be a rule that they have to have at least 3 games under their belt. Because I mean, they could have 3 games that took like a day each to make, and then someone else could have like a game that took 7 years to make. that's just not, Now if they just have one game and it took a day to make, but I don't know, like if they're noteworthy enough to be for this person to think of them to put them on the list, then they're probably noteworthy enough to rank. I don't know. Okay. I think we need to get started on this because one, I've been really sick, and I'm afraid that my voice is gonna depart during the stream, and it's gonna be bad. Two, I am concerned that some of these are going to take a long time. I get the sense that like some of these are going to require some disentangling for me. Like lives, I feel like I can look at that from a bunch of different angles, and really I think I'm going to struggle to figure out how to make that into a coherent thing to rank in my head, or like runbacks even. Procgen should be quick. I've talked about Procgen enough on this stream recently that, and just always, I always talk about Procgen and why I like it. So can probably just throw that in S tier, honestly. But yeah, precision platforming. I feel like some of this is gonna be real complicated. So let's go ahead and try to get into it. Yeah. So we'll start with Gacha. Oh, by the way, Gacha. Sorry, I'm not trying to talk about Gacha right now. By the way, if tell me if the thing is happening again that someone was telling me about last week with my mic popping or something, because I changed it back to how the settings were before. I didn't, like I said, I was dead all week, and so I didn't have time to look into it. But if that's happening again, I will change the mic settings so that you do not hear the popping, but then you will hear my air conditioner. So tell me if that's happening. Thanks. Okay. Gotcha. So Gacha, there's not really a way to interpret this other than, wow, anonymous gifter, thank you for giving 5 subs. Really appreciate that. Please please enjoy the emotes that are no longer very relevant to what the stream is. Except Syncopause, except the Syncopause emote. That one's very relevant. Okay, gotcha. So like gotcha just means like specifically the thing where you put in money and get a random thing, right? Like it's referencing the we'll look it up. Like it's not, we can't really make this about like the overall genre or something, or even about like, I'm wondering if I can extend it somehow to like coin op game, like, you know, the fact that you put in you have to spend money to get a try in an arcade game or something. But I don't really think we should that feels a little bit untrue to what this obviously is talking about. So yeah, I think we just have to put it in F. I think I'm having a hard time imagining what the good thing is about Gacha. As far as the bad thing about it, like I don't really have strong feelings about like the effect on the quote unquote whales, right? Like the idea. Okay, do I want to talk about this? Okay, like I think the fact is this whole like monetization scheme, and this is not just like gacha games. This is like Twitch monetization scheme and like Patreon and all kinds of stuff like that. Like this general concept of like we have to figure out how to get more money from rich people because income inequality is a fucking disaster right now. Like you know what I'm saying? Like you don't know what I'm saying because I haven't made my point yet. My point is I feel like this kind of thing is like inevitable, and it doesn't bother me that the game is incentivizing super rich people to put a lot of money into it, because I feel like that is just the economic reality right now. However, it's obviously very bad. It's like you know, if you think about the impact on the ultra rich people of getting addicted to a gacha game and the wanting to spend a ton of money on it, I feel like that's usually like not a big deal to me. But it's the game design is The game design does not have an opinion about it does not adapt to whether you are rich or poor, right? It is getting you addicted no matter how much money you have, and making you feel like you have to put in money regardless of how much money you have, and that is obviously bad, right? So the overall impact on, people who should not be spending money on this and feel manipulated into spending money or whatever, obviously bad. Um, so yeah, is there some, could you come up with some argument about why it's maybe interesting gameplay somehow or something? I don't know. It always, gotcha mechanics always come along with games that are not really interesting to me anyway, so I feel very comfortable putting it at a F tier. Right. Right. Yeah, gotcha machines. Yeah, gotcha machines. I think gotcha machines have a. I would put gotcha machines. I would, maybe I wouldn't put them in D tier. Maybe I'd still put gotcha machines in F tier. But like, there's something nice about, turning the thing or whatever. I don't know. I haven't used an actual gotcha machine. I assume you like turn something, or like, you get a nice satisfying like physical real world clank of the thing like falling down into the slot, and then, I don't know. It feels, there's also just more friction. Maybe friction's not quite the right word, but you can't do it all the time. You have to leave your house. It's not with it. It's not inside of a game that's trying to addict you. Yeah, it's just gross. Yeah, the aesthetic deception of crane games. That's yeah. Um, it is more of an economic thing than a game design thing, but it's kind of, I don't know. It's hard to distinguish. Okay, we got to move on. If we're spending this long talking about gotcha, we're never gonna get through this. Okay, incremental games. Okay, I now have to click the cookie. I have to click the cookie to drag it around. Um, I've heard a lot of people talk about incremental games in a sort of positive way, which is like, I think Matthew Matosis has a little bit about this in one of his micro videos, maybe meta micro videos. Basically, like, you know, it's cool that these games are like shining a light on this thing that game on the loop, the kind of dopamine. What do you call it? The whole the Skinner box kind of aspect, of game design. Is that a defense? Is that a defense of them? I'm not sure. So yeah, I guess in terms of like, we're rating this as a trend, right? Before incremental games, I think it was a little bit maybe harder to see that type of thing for what it is, and maybe after incremental games, it's a little bit easier. It's like, I don't know. It still ultimately is the same thing, and like, I don't know. I find it interesting though. I find it interesting that that still works even when you strip away all these other elements that were ostensibly what was interesting about the game, like open world exploration, role playing, all of these types of things that you get in like a Western RPG, for example. You just strip it down to the incremental part, and that's still a compelling game to people. Um, I don't know. I like universal paper clips. Universal paper clips. So we can't really say that that's part of the trend exactly. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten it without the trend, probably. But it kind of, to me at least, it feels much more like a one and done type of thing. It's designed to give you a clear stopping point where you can say, yeah. I will say universal paper clips. Do I want to critique universal paper clips right now? It's like, no, I won't do it. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah, right. It's like, yeah, it's kind of, it's wearing the skin of a of an incremental game, but it doesn't really feel like an incremental game because there are pretty solid like jumps. You kind of realize a way that you should be doing something, and then you pretty quickly jump. Then again, maybe you could frame most incremental games. There's no clear dividing line between like most incremental games and that, right? Where like in most incremental games there is a lot to realize that will, you can think a lot, about your strategy, you can think a lot about the systems and how they work, and maybe try to figure out unintuitive things about them that will get you ahead faster. And it is kind of nice. It's a very something like that is pretty, it's well it's there's a good aspect to it. There's an aspect to it that I actually do like in a lot of games, and bro likes kind of have this where like the game absorbs. It's designed in such a way. It's structured in such a way that it absorbs different amounts of attention and brain power. Right. It absorbs whatever you bring to it, and it works for you regardless of how much you can bring to it. Right. Like you can incremental games go very low on this scale of how much you can bring to it, right? Like it goes all the way down to like all I can do right now is click, and it's still like engaging. Which there's an argument to be made that it shouldn't be engaging. If that's all the brain power you can bring to it, it maybe should not be that engaging. It should be like, hey, maybe it should maybe feel like, hey, I should just come back to this later. I should go outside or something, and try to feel better. Um, but anyway, it absorbs any amount of attention from that, and any amount of effort from that to like, I'm gonna hyper optimize. I'm gonna make an Excel spreadsheet and really analyze this and figure out what the optimal strategy is. Um, yeah, I just don't think it's particularly interesting at either end of that spectrum. Whereas bro likes 868 back, Syncopause, whatever. They don't go as low, which again maybe is a good thing, because maybe you just shouldn't be playing a game right now if that's all you can handle. Uh, but at every point in that kind of attention support spectrum that I'm talking about, uh, it gives you commensurate reward for that effort that you're willing to put in. Um, what am I talking about incremental games at all at this point? I'm just saying things. Incremental is S tier in my eyes. Yeah. I don't know about that. Yeah, that. See, okay, you say it started as a parody of grindy MMORPGs, and that's kind of why I hesitate. That's part of why I hesitate to rank it so low. Is it it feels a little bit. The whole trend feels a little bit like self-aware and funny about it. It's also just honest. It is what it is. It's like I rated cozy games as S tier because I like I like that it just is what it is. It's giving people something that they want, even though it's not something that I want at all. I think I think the world of video games culture is better when those things are kind of sectioned off, Like I would rather have that than like people looking for cozy game appeal in competitive games or any other kind of games that I'm interested in. Sectioned off is not quite how I feel about it, but yeah, I like the honesty of it. I think I might put it like B tier or something. Definitely has some negative effects, but yeah, I don't know. The aggregate of all of the things I just said feels like B tier to me. You think there are quite a few incremental games where you have to actually engage with the math and resource management? I mean, I'm not talking about stuff like Tactical Nexus. Like Tactical Nexus is you could describe that as an incremental game to some degree, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about true. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should include that. Maybe we should be including stuff like that. To keep it simple, I'm gonna stick with true incremental games like the Kittens game and uh, what's that? Clicker Heroes and Cookie Clicker and Cow Clicker and uh, Melver Idol or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Okay. This is where we're gonna kind of run into a roadblock. I think this is just such a mess to try to think about this. Okay, lives. It just so depends, man. It just like it just super duper depends. Um, I will say, often lives appear in game designs alongside health bars, right? And that feels a little bit weird to me. Like that feels a little bit inelegant, right? Because it's just why do we need a health bar and then a meta health bar? But it makes sense, right? Like it 868 back has this. I haven't played 868 back really yet, so I don't know why I've mentioned it two times in the stream already. But like, maybe that's a testament to how interesting it is or something. But yeah, it kind of spreads out the risk. It spreads out the risk in a different way. I don't know. It can do a lot of different things. I mean, since I haven't really played 868 back, I'm not going to try to explain what it does in that game. But like, think about like in a beat 'em up, like you have a health bar and then you also have lives. That lets you have a kind of feeling where you can pick up a chicken and like you can have these really high tension moments where your health is really low, but then suddenly you pick up a chicken and you're back to completely fine. Without I don't know, is that really related to the live counter? I'm not sure. Going live on Instagram. I don't think a lot of video game streamers are going on Instagram. Yeah, I mean, well, in Super Mario, like you can make one mistake and die. So lives are kind of smoothing out the punishment of something like that. I just have so many things to say. I don't know how to how to wrangle this. So in arcadey kind of games, it makes sense in combination with the game over, right? But I think that structure might be a little bit overrated or overused. Because like if you think about okay, so I was just saying like I was just saying like you can think of lives plus health bar as being a kind of inelegant thing where they're both kind of just representing the distance between where you are right now and uh game over. You can think of something like Jump King as extremely elegant in that way because it doesn't have lives or a health bar, and yet it has a way of setting you back, right? And you can imagine, even though it wouldn't, Jump King has a very the way it works in Jump King, if you're not aware, you miss a jump and then you fall down, and depending on where you miss a jump, you might fall down just a little bit, or you might fall down very far and basically have to redo an entire like area to get back to where you were. And so that kind of ensures that you are reasonably consistent at the entire game as you get through it. And it also allows for a little bit more of, like arcade game developers, they always wanted to have like a difficulty curve where the earlier stages are significantly easier than the later stages, because otherwise you're just scaring new players away. You want new players to have a little bit of a good time before they get completely destroyed, especially if they're putting money in. But that kind of creates it kind of creates a problem then when in combination with the game over screen, where expert players now, when they die, they have to redo these stages that are really easy for them. And scoring kind of compensates for that a little bit sometimes, but usually doesn't do a great job. I mean, there's kind of an assumption within this entire design paradigm that survival difficulty really matters. Because if it didn't, you would just make the difficulty low enough that that a new player could have a good time more or less the whole way through, and then you would just use scoring to create interest for the higher level players, right? So there's kind of an assumption in arcade game design that survival difficulty really matters. So yeah, they end up in this weird situation where like the later stages are too difficult for the new players, the early stages are too difficult for the expert players, but both types of players have to play both the parts of the game at some point, right? And especially the expert players get sick of the early stages. And I think a structure more like Jump King kind of solves this, where you're usually not, once you're decent at the game, you're usually not going to go you're not going to fall all the way back down to the beginning, or at least it's very rare. You're spending an appropriate amount of time compared to an arcade game structure. You're spending a more appropriate amount of time in each kind of part of the game and each kind of level of difficulty if there's kind of a smooth, slowly increasing difficulty curve throughout the game. Yeah, because you usually just get set back a little bit, but but at the same time it manages to have this consistency check like an arcade, like the classic kind of arcade game structure. Hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully you can imagine how you could apply that. It wouldn't be quite as elegant because Jump King has this very natural way of setting you back. Like the falling down is like it's built into the level design, right? Which is extremely elegant. But an arcade game, you can imagine a beat 'em up like not having lives, and instead, if your health runs out, you get set back to not just the beginning of the current stage, but the beginning of the previous stage, or something like that. So that there's the same kind of consistency check without having to set you back all the way. Yeah, and of course you can still do things like, have a leaderboard that requires you to do a 1 credit clear to get a high score, so that people are still incentivized after they're good at the game. They're still incentivized to do the whole thing in one go and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, hopefully that explains one part of why I think lives might be not so great as a lot of people would say. A lot of people who like kind of hardcore action-y games like I do. I have more to say, but let me catch up on the chat. Isn't that every video game? What game doesn't get harder later? Well, Syncopas. Syncopas doesn't get harder later. Yeah, I don't know. I think Angel Game doesn't get harder later. I don't know. I think games that are replayable. If a game, my ideal. This is not necessarily possible for any kind of game design. There might be trade-offs with making this happen, but my ideal is that if a game is going to be replayable and also like set you back, the type of game that you're going to play for many, many hours, hundreds of hours, let's say. And it's also going to be the type of game where you have to start from the beginning after you fail. Well, just think about what that structure does to you, right? What that structure does is it makes you play the early levels more than you're spending more time in the early levels than you are in the later levels. So if the earlier levels and the later levels are different, wouldn't it make sense to say that the early levels should actually be maybe not harder but deeper, which often correlates with harder? I don't know. I think a lot of people's takes on difficulty are kind of backwards or messed up in some way. I also think, a lot of modern puzzle games kind of move in this direction. Like Jonathan Blow has talked about this with his games. This is a different from what I was just saying. Different from what I was just saying about a game that starts you from the beginning, but a different kind of game, like a puzzle game that's a single playthrough type of thing. He and others have talked about how they don't really want to have a difficulty curve exactly. They more want to have variations in difficulty throughout, where you're gonna have moments where you encounter something that's really hard, and then you're gonna encounter right after that it's gonna be something that's easy. It's like things should just be an appropriate level of difficulty for what they are, and usually that does kind of lead to things getting a little bit more difficult as the game goes on, just because things can get more complex as the game goes on, because you've introduced so many ideas that have built on top of each other, and elaborations like that. Things just naturally get more complex. So there's that. But yeah, generally I don't. There's a difficulty range that feels good for me, and for everyone. For everyone, there's a difficulty range in which they are comfortable. And maybe at the lower end of that range is like, this is a kind of comfy, breezy game that I can just play through without taking any breaks, whatever. And at the upper end of that range, wherever that range is for you personally, at the upper end of that range is like, I need to really be like locked in when I'm playing this. I might need to take frequent breaks. I might like not be able to play it if I'm not feeling 100%. I need to kind of have the energy and time and space to dedicate to this game. But it's not so hard that it feels like punishment, and it's not so. It's still within a range that feels rewarding, right? It feels worth it. Okay, so everyone has a range like that. Doesn't it? But everyone's range kind of falls in a different kind of spot, right? Often when I play a really long game that gets harder as it goes on, I'm thinking like Space Chem as an example. I'm thinking a lot of the Zachtronics games. I'm thinking like Can of Wormholes. Even a lot of games I like Snakebird. I'm trying to think of a non-puzzle game. I mean, surely there are examples. I'm kind of thinking Celeste, but like, I don't know. Celeste is reasonably hard pretty early, but I don't know. There are tons of games that are kind of single playthrough kinds of games, which is why I'm mostly thinking of puzzle games, where it gets significantly harder as it goes on, and it feels like no one player is going to feel comfortable, is going to feel like the difficulty level is really perfect for them the whole way through. There are going to be players where they're really comfortable at the beginning, and then at some point they have to drop off. You hear this all the time with Zachtronics games, right? You hear all the time like, yeah, I was really enjoying Space Chem, and at some point it got too hard, but that's fine. I got enough value out of it, right? I played it for like 40 hours. This happens a lot with all kinds of puzzle games. Like there's that, and then there's people like me. Like I've played a bajillion puzzle games, and they just come naturally to me compared to other genres. So the beginning part of most of a lot of puzzle games is like too easy for me to the point where it's boring. And then maybe later on it's like, man, I really wish the whole game had hit this kind of difficulty level. So yeah, I generally think that the concept of a increasing difficulty curve is really overrated. Man, we're really off track from the lives discussion at this point. But yeah. practice modes fix this? Well, okay, let's get back to what I was saying about the more arcadey games, since that's more relevant to lives. That's maybe going to help us get back on track for lives. So yeah, I mean, I think Bog Hog kind of gets it because Bog Hog, just going by caramel action, it's just really hard, right? It's just super hard from stage one. It doesn't really have a difficulty curve. It has loop 2, which feels like it wasn't really even designed to be completed. It feels like it was designed for just to see if anyone would do that, would be insane enough to do that. Yeah, and yeah, you're talking about difficulty modes, by the way, which this is what I just said about the full difficulty curve not really hitting the whole way through for any one person. That is why that's the reason my understanding of that concept is a big part of the reason behind why I like difficulty modes, why I think difficulty modes are underappreciated when done right. And yeah, something like Mushihime-sama is sort of done right. I have complicated feelings about that one because it also just kind of changes the game in that case. Like, original feels pretty different from Maniac, and Ultra feels really different from the other two in terms of, like, there's just so much more memo required. Like, it gets, certain kinds of gameplay, if you crank the difficulty hard enough, it changes the dynamics, right? Like, you can go into Mushi Maniac and mostly play intuitively and not have to, like, practice and route and grind so much. Ultra, not so much. It kind of changes the balance of what is actually happening here in this game. So I have complicated feelings about that one, but yes, in general, I am in favor of that kind of thing, and I think more arcade games should do it. And I think more, it's hard to ask, like, a puzzle game designer to just make 2 different puzzle games, like 2 different full sets of levels for their puzzle game. That kind of feels like a lot of work. But I think if you're making a game that really needs to sell, and you're putting the amount of work that entails into the visuals and the audio and all of this stuff, if you're making an Order of the Sinking Star type of production, or anything close to that, not just a solo dev, intentionally niche kind of project, you should strongly consider doing that. And we see stuff like the Can of Wormholes, what's it called? The hint system in Can of Wormholes, gain insight. So, like, you're doing one of the regular levels, and you can press a button at any time that's basically a hint system that says gain insight. And what that does is it takes you into a simpler level. And by solving that simpler level, you have now seen the trick. The game has shown you the trick through a simpler level that you will have to apply on the harder level, right? I really think it would be better if they just had 2 separate difficulty tracks. You have the harder difficulty track and you have the easier difficulty track. Maybe you can then also still include the hint system in the harder one. I'm not sure, but yeah, to me it just doesn't make sense to have the gain insight thing when you can just have 2 different difficulty tracks. However, it obviously is a lot of work to do it right. Anyway, back to arcadey kind of games. Would I not want it for it to get even harder later on? Do I want a flat curve or one that just starts at a higher level than usual? It depends. Like, in caramel action, it's okay for me. I'm okay with it in caramel action. I don't mind it because, again, it starts pretty hard, and the resource management aspect, you have 7 bombs in caramel action. That's all you have, and 8 cherry bombs. You have these resources to manage, and after you get good enough to clear the first loop at all, the first loop stays challenging long after that. there's a huge gap between being good enough to try to clear the first loop and being good enough to try to clear 2 loops in Caramel Action. But through that entire skill gap, the first loop stays somewhat engaging because the difficulty scales with how many resources you're willing to commit to it. And the better you get at the game, the more you can say, okay, I'm actually not going to use this cherry bomb on stage 4 that I was using every time. I can, only use that when I really have to, and I can try to not use any bombs to save them all for loop 2. And so the difficulty of loop 1 kind of scales with that. So you don't really have to there's not as much need for a higher difficulty level there. And yeah, I think for me, I don't care about survival difficulty as much as some people do. I'm happy with I'm happy playing a game like Syncopause long after I hit the point where 95+% of the time I'm not worried about whether I can survive the whole Jogo or not. Well, it's also different in Syncopause because it's good in Syncopause because the survival difficulty remains because you're trying to score. You have to risk your life to try to score. You have to constantly choose, can I take on this level of risk to get a few extra points, right? And then you get yourself into a situation where, okay, you got those points, but now can you survive? Can you get out of here alive? That's something that you can do that to me is just as good as like base survival difficulty. If you have to risk your life to score and the game makes scoring compelling and has a good scoring system, I'm completely fine with that. Like I don't need baseline difficulty the way that some arcade people are always talking about. So it's complicated, but yeah, I do think more games should have difficulty select. More good games should have difficulty select. Yeah, Extraction is kind of related to this. But anyway, lives. What else can we say about lives? I feel like there are other angles to hit here. Yeah, obviously it makes sense as some kind of consistency check with a little bit of leeway, right? Like you don't have to be 100% consistent to the point where you can literally, you can never die if you want to get through it. And it lives or something like lives are good in combination with heavy procedural generation and high difficulty, which is obviously a combination that I'm into. Because you can give the player bullshit sometimes. You can generate something that is really just too hard and just be like, well, you've got 5 more lives. So that's not gonna happen 6 times in the run. So it's fine. I like when games have 1-ups in places where you'll die at least once trying to get it. Yeah, but again, this is something that could be done with like health, Is it? Maybe it's a little bit different. A lot of the things about lives feel like they could. Yeah. It doesn't really need to be lives exactly. Yeah, and this is another angle to talking about this as a trend. We're talking about lives as a trend. The trend went on for quite a while after it went on for quite a while after it made any sense at all. It made its way into console games and stayed there for way too long. Mario 64 being a good example. Like why do we want lives in that game? That's just wild. But yeah, the other thing I was going to say, Caramel Action doesn't have lives and it doesn't have a health bar. It just has the bombs. And the bombs are like a get out of jail free card. And I can see something like that working well for me. It doesn't exactly work well for me in Caramel Action because there's such a snowball effect. It's often you have to bomb in a situation in that game where it makes it actually harder. The fact that you bombed makes it actually harder to recover and finish the rest of the level. Whereas in like a shmup, for example, usually it just clears the whole screen and lets you kind of start from, it lets you get back on route very easily. But okay, here's another thing. Here's a very important thing to address. With lives, I think I think the necessity of lives for me, I think this is a very personal thing for me that I don't care about lives as much as some people. Because I have this gamer gene. I have the lock-in gamer gene where I don't have any trouble paying attention. You know, people. I have gleaned over the years by talking to people about games that I like and games in general, and watching people play games. I've gleaned that people really they struggle with like focus. They often lose focus. Like if you're playing a shmup, for example, and you just zone out for a second and forget that you were supposed to be here at this particular spot in advance or whatever, or yeah, you just comparing like Syncopause to 868 back. I think 868 back is feels a lot friendlier to most players. Whereas Syncopause is totally fine for me. The fact that you're constantly encouraged in Syncopause to live on the edge, to use every extra health point and finish every Jogo at 1 health because you spent all that other health, you know, trying to get extra score. And yet, that in combination with the fact that you can die and lose like a run that you spent like 20 hours of gameplay on, that's just insane for most people. To me, it's like whatever, because I can trust myself to stay locked in. But I think for most people, that's just not really. I don't know. I get the sense that I just have a gene for that most people don't really have. So I think for most people, having a few lives to just cover that and give you just a clean reset, try again without taking away so much progress is probably sensible. Thanks for the resub, Moist. Main difference between lives and health is that once you lose a life, you never get it back, unless there's a max amount of lives you can carry, like in Gunvein. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it really just varies. It really just varies. Sometimes you can get extra lives, sometimes you can't. Sometimes they cap out, sometimes they don't. Um, I guess I'm also just thinking about this like in theory, whereas I should be thinking about it in reality as an actual trend to rank here. As an actual trend, I think it's fine. I think I'm gonna put it C tier. Maybe I'll put it B tier. It makes sense for a lot of games to have lives. It just does. It just also gets used in a lot of situations where something else would be better. It kind of feels like pick 3. It kind of feels like pick 1 of 3 to me, where it's just the default for a certain type of game, and I wish that they would consider something else. I wish that they would think about doing it another way. So I'm gonna put it C tier actually. Um, I think that's enough. I could probably come at it from different angles. I'm thinking about a certain game that's one of my favorite games of all time that has. I don't want to spoil things. It's kind of a spoiler. Anyway, okay. Let's leave it at that. C feels right for that. Open world. Yeah, we got both of the Skyrim. We got all the open world things in the D tier. um, I think it's. I think we have to define this as like really open, right? Because obviously this is a spectrum, and we're going to get to this with procedural generation as well. Because we were just talking about on Twitter, we were just talking about how it's a spectrum. Um, truly open world. I guess. I guess there's no. What would a truly open world be like? A zero pushback on moving around in any direction. Like I feel like not even a walking simulator is all the way at the end of the spectrum a lot of the time because like some ways are going to be less obvious. I don't know. You could think of like Proteus or whatever as truly like all the way open world. Probably that's not true. That's not true actually. That game has like tricks that let you travel to different places and stuff. If I recall correctly. No, I'm saying that like something like baby steps. First of all, baby steps is like kind of linear. So that makes it not open world to me. But also, I'm saying that it makes it less open when the game uh, has any kind of obstacle, right? Any kind of obstacle makes it at least a little bit less open. Now, Skyrim, I think, has little enough obstacle in basically any has few enough obstacles in basically any direction that we can safely call it open world. You know, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Some areas are a little harder to get to than others, but you can basically go anywhere from the beginning. But yeah, I think I'm not counting as part of the open world trend. I don't think it makes sense to count something like Dark Souls. I don't think it makes sense to count something like Zelda 1 because they really funnel you, right? Like it's technically open. Is that even true? Like, you know, a lot of the paths you have to figure out a specific thing and it's really tricky to figure out that thing or you need a specific item in a few cases. But also the main thing is the game really funnels you towards specific easier spots early on because just with difficulty, right? Um, you're just not going to do certain dungeons first in Zelda 1. You're not going to go into the catacombs first in Dark Souls 1 just because of difficulty or something that you don't know, knowledge checks, whatever. Um, and similarly like The Witness or Rain World, Outer Wilds even. Outer Wilds is pretty open though. Anyway, what I'm saying is it's a spectrum, but we're talking about the open world trend, which is you know mostly a AAA type of phenomenon. With yeah, it's really open. It's really open. Yeah, yeah. WoW. I would say is not open world. I don't know. It's not part of the open world trend, right? Like I don't want to say that WoW is not open world. I don't want to say that Dark Souls is not open world. I will refer to those to Dark Souls as open world at some point in the future, I'm sure. But if we're talking about the open world trend in game design, I think I think it makes sense to limit it to stuff like Skyrim, Assassin's Creed, whatever. So yeah, just not enough pushback for me, I think. I think the necessity making it that open where you can go anywhere, you can climb that mountain and nothing will get in your way. If I could climb the mountain only by figuring something out, that would be cool. But if I can just climb the mountain no matter what, then where's the game? It's just at that point it just becomes a tour of the environment, which can be cool, I guess, but I would like a tour of the environment. I would like the appeal of going through a nice environment while also getting the appeal of playing an interesting game, which is what I get when I play Dark Souls. Map marker games, yeah, yeah. Although not necessarily, it doesn't have to have a map marker. But I'm trying to think of like what's the Steelman, what's the best truly open world game that I've played. Uh, Are there Sylvie games that are open world? No. um, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think I might even put it F tier because I'm struggling to imagine why I would want this. I mean, I guess again, it if we're rating it as a trend, we might want to put it higher just because it satisfies a certain thing that people obviously want. They just want to explore a world, um, and have some little check boxes to check off. Elden Ring, haven't played it yet, but yeah, probably that's probably a good pick. But yeah, even Elden Ring, like, wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be better if it was less open? Surely. Not better for most people, maybe, but better for me. um, but yeah, do I have to rate it higher because I'm I feel like I've gotten myself into a trap where I have to rate things highly even though I don't like them because it's like a good thing to exist. It feels like I don't have any wanderlust. I don't think that's true at all. I just think that I can get that feeling in a game like Rain World or a game like Dark Souls 1 or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, it does feel a little bit more like it's leaked into other kinds of games. It doesn't feel contained like cozy games and stuff like that. I'm gonna keep it D tier. I think if it were just my taste, I would put it F tier. But I think the fact that it keeps a certain type of gamer in their bubble just playing those open world games, and that's all they want to do. That maybe is a slight positive. But yeah. Did I explore Shadow of the Colossus' world despite knowing there's literally nothing there? Yeah, yeah, some. I actually want to go back to Shadow of the Colossus just because it's been so long since I played it. Um, there are the lizards and stuff, and I never really engaged with that, so I'm kind of curious to revisit that game. I am more of a I am more of a Last Guardian guy though, but that's just because I think it's better. I think I like the open world. I like the world in Shadow of the Colossus. I just think the Last Guardian's better. I think it's the better scenario. I think it's more poignant or something. I think it's more unique in a certain way. I don't know. I think it's Ueda's best game. Yeah, and I've seen a bunch of people saying this recently. I heard Matthew Matosis. I've been listening to Matthew Matosis streams in the wake of Aesthetic Deception, and he said something like, I'm kind of coming around on Last Guardian maybe being his best game, which I came around on that day one. But then I also saw Matthew Ball on Twitter saying that, which I retweeted. Um, Too set piece heavy. What's so is Shadow of the Colossus though, right? Like I don't know about the lizards, by the way. I know that they exist, and I'm just curious what the deal is with that. But yeah, I want to return to Shadow of the Colossus and just play it again. Uh, okay, Shadow of the Colossus remake added coins. Oh god, like okay, um, that doesn't seem good. But I'm also kind of picturing like Mario coins like leading you through the world, which I'm sure it's not like that. But yeah. You're replaying The Last Guardian, there's an unfortunate amount of adventure game logic and contrived situations. As exactly like Shadow of the Colossus and Eco. So if we're talking about, I would prefer all else equal, I would prefer less of that as well. But if we're talking about Ueda games, I don't think that changes the fact that The Last Guardian clears. Okay. Precision platforming. I think it's cool. Also, someone was saying, I'm glad that they used this image. I made this, by the way. So I picked this image. I'm a big fan of this this meme. See if I can find it. Oh, this is a good one too. This is a good one. For some reason, I can't find the. This is also. I could I could talk about all these. Maybe I should do a stream where I respond to all of the game design memes. Anyway, it's the meme about, precision platformer level design. Put spikes all around, draw a path through the level and then put spikes literally everywhere else so that yeah. So that you can't do anything else, which it is sort of a failure mode of precision platformers. Sort of. I do think it exaggerates the problem a little bit. Like, I don't really feel this way when I'm playing precision platformers. Usually, they usually feel restricted in a pretty good way, where it makes the level design feel kind of puzzly, right? It's like it makes it pretty obvious, but you still have to think and realize, like, oh yeah, this is. I'm going to use, in Celeste, I'm going to use my dash here before this thing, and it recharges at this thing, and then, in combination with the objects in the level, it's not always immediately clear, even though there are a lot of spikes. It's not always immediately clear the exact order, where exactly you want to use your dash, where you want to climb versus wall jump, where you want to, like, whatever. Yeah. These days, I'm not a big fan of pure precision platformer appeal, like thinking about like Love Eternal. Like, I'm not a huge fan, let's say, because I enjoyed Love Eternal, which as we will see on my next stream when I do the ranking every game I've played this year so far. Like, I enjoyed that. There's something about that game where it's like it just feels really nice. Like, the movement just feels really nice, and getting the patterns of a level into your hands where it's just muscle memory, and then you can execute it. It kind of, I feel like that game kind of leans into the appeal of like learning to play a musical instrument. It's like, we're going to design the level to feel good to play more than to be interesting to figure out, or to be, a strategy type of challenge or anything like that. It feels like it's leaning in. Precision platformers often feel like they're leaning into just how it feels to play in your hands, and how that kind of relates in some way that's hard to pin down to like the jump physics, the gravity, all of that, how all that stuff is tuned. That's cool, and that kind of appeal is cool. I think I liked it a long time ago, and it's just something that kind of ran dry. It's a well that ran dry for me a while ago, just because I've played so many games that are like that. Spending 10,000 hours speedrunning Majora's Mask, for example. Like, a lot of that is just getting these motions into your hands, and it feels like learning to play an instrument, and then you also have to learn how to like improvise with it, right? So part of what's good in precision platforms as well is that it's not just that you have to memorize each particular piece. It also challenges you to sight read every new screen, every new challenge that you encounter. And so it becomes, you get the system into your hands like playing a musical instrument, and then it kind of pushes you, when you get into new levels, it pushes you to kind of improvise and makes it feel more like true mastery over that instrument, But yeah, I've just experienced stuff like that a lot. I've experienced these pure. I feel like I've experienced every angle of pure button press timing challenges that can possibly exist in video games at this point. And to interest me in something like that now, and this includes rhythm games as well, which are obviously very similar to like the extreme type of precision platformer like this. To interest me in something like that at this point, it has to be a different type of precision. It has to make me do something weird physically somehow. Like it's making me hold the controller a weird way. It's like, it's about like precise tilts of the control stick, right? Like you have to not just like press the control stick the right direction at the right time, but like tilt it 15 degrees downward, and like the difference between that and 30 degrees downward really matters, and then you have to move it around in a circle. You can imagine all kinds of stuff that hasn't been explored that would still be in the precise inputs category, that hasn't really been explored well in games yet. But as far as the trend, right? We're talking about the trend here. We're talking about a specific trend that does not include that. I feel like I'm kind of burnt on that. I've kind of reached the bottom of the well and don't really need that anymore. However, I do like things that have emerged from the precision platforming trend. For example, I really like Soft Kitten Experience by Sylvie, and Sylvie games in general, but especially Soft Kitten Experience. I feel like is the extreme example of one thing that I really like that she does with precision platformer design, which is making it more doing weird stuff. And like Derelict Star kind of gets in this category as well, and that's a big part of why I like it. And I'm struggling to think of other examples, but I know there are other examples. But it's like making an interesting movement system, an interesting like platformer system that's unlike most games. It's not just this simple like I want to be the guy thing again, or it's not just this simple Celeste-ish thing again. It's like there's something odd going on. There's some major twist. There's at least one major twist on it that leads to interesting consequences that you have to figure out how to master and figure out how they work and get into your brain. And then the precision platforming serves to like bring out, like the game gets precise at some point, or maybe in the case of Soft Kitten Experience, it's precise from the beginning. But the precision feels like a necessary component of this overall design. It wouldn't, like there's stuff in Soft Kitten Experience where like the exact number of frames that you do something really matters, and like your sub-pixel position becomes part of the level that matters, and the game is intentionally designed to get you to that depth of appreciation of what's going on here and of every little intricacy. And you just can't do that. You can't do that without it being precise, right? You just can't you can't force me to understand this really weird tiny detail at that granular kind of level without precise level design, and without making me do something precise. Yeah, the appeal of Soft Kitten Experience and a lot of Sylvie games to me is more of like a figuring out this weird system and doing science on it, right? I'm experimenting and figuring out what I can do in this world with this movement system, and then I have to do some precision platforming because that's a necessary part of exploring this particular system. But it doesn't feel like the point to me. I know for other people it is the point, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a positive trend. Maybe even A. I think it's A for me. Yeah, I think. I mean, do you even see how many games do you really see that are like the worst part of this meme? I mean, how many games do you see that are like this meme? The worst, the worst thing that precision platformers do. I don't know. I don't really think of a lot of. Super Monkey Ball does that. Yeah, yeah. It's not exactly. I don't know if I would exactly call it a platformer, but yeah. Let's see. See if there's any chat messages that I need to address here. Do I reckon they should be clear or unclear on how to traverse them? So going back to this meme. So there's a spectrum. It's going to be different for every game. The TLDR is it's going to be different for every game. But you can imagine a spectrum between this, which is like we don't let you even think about doing anything but the right answer. As much as possible, we have made it obvious what the right answer is, what you need to do here. And then at the other end of the spectrum, it's like putting the minimum number of obstacles. Obviously, you could put no obstacles at all and just let you go through the level your own way, and then that's like a different. But that's a different thing, right? What the spectrum I'm interested in is from this meme to minimum obstacles to so that you can't do it any other way. There's still only one solution, but the fact that there aren't spikes everywhere makes it a lot less obvious what that solution is, right? The constraint around what you can all of the ways that the spikes tell you can't do it this way makes it obvious what way you can do it. Whereas if there was just more open space, if it let you, yeah, if it just had the necessary constraints that prevented you from doing the level, from getting you from cheesing it, from doing an unintended solution type of thing, but it left a lot more open space so that you could try things or think that you might be able to do it some way, but actually you can't. When you actually try it, you find out that you can't, and you have to try again and, keep thinking about it. Yeah, there's some balance on that spectrum that's good for different games and for different target audiences, right? Some people need this because they're really bad at puzzles, or they're just like not good at thinking about a platformer in a puzzly way. I think a lot of people who would do okay with puzzles in a grid-based, turn-based puzzle game are not really so good at thinking about platformer level design or action game level design in a puzzly kind of way. They just don't. The correct thought processes just never kick in because they're like locked in on pressing the buttons at the right time, and they just like end up banging their head against the wall doing it the wrong way for some reason. So yeah, this it just depends. It just depends. Yeah, I will never play 868 back except when I do, and then you spit your cereal out. Yeah, specific markings on when to throw shells, when to spin jump, etc. That feels a little tacky to me. That's getting a little bit into yellow paint territory. I would like for it to be like a little more subtle. I think there's an appeal to reading the level design without it explicitly telling you do this right now. There's an appeal in following the flow of the level and trying and kind of understanding, yeah, this seems like this is pointing toward me doing this, and there's a little bit of deduction game in there with that. There's appeal to that gets cut out when you do the yellow paint thing, and that the Kaizo thing you're talking about feels a little bit like the yellow paint thing. I like Celeste a lot as like a beginner, intro to serious platformers kind of game. I mean, I enjoyed it even as someone who had played a lot of platformers before that. It's not like my favorite game ever, but I would recommend it as like a, you know, you should play Derelict Star, and you should play Sylvie games, and you should play Control the Body, and you should play all of this, all of these. You should play Love Eternal, but maybe you shouldn't play all of those games without playing Celeste first, right? But yeah, also I just think it's good when you're at that skill level. I think it's probably really good. Um, is it really learning how to play an instrument, or more so learning how to play one specific song slash track? Yeah, I hopefully I kind of addressed that as I went on with my ramble about that. But also I do think I do want more rhythm games and other games that are kind of in this territory. I want them to include some kind of, or even be completely designed around procedural generation and more about sight reading. And I've talked about this recently with Planet Quest, which is a rhythm game that I think is interesting. I enjoyed a good bit. Uh, yeah, these games are at their best when there's some sort of interesting pathing puzzle. Yeah, often I would agree with that. Often that's true. Like, I don't know. I just it's good to me. It's good to me when games have more than one. They're hitting on more than one axis, right? They're hitting in more than one way at the same time. Like, if it feels good to play on a, getting the movements into your hands, that kind of basic precision gameplay kind of appeal, but also a little bit of a sight reading. Can I understand this? Uh, can I understand this on the fly well enough? And then also like a puzzly kind of thing that goes along with that. Like, there's just a little more going on there than the worst type of precision platforming that you see in this meme. Um, have I tried Rhythm Heaven where the cues are the rhythm and not the visual? Yes. I liked Rhythm Heaven when I played it when I was younger. It's been a while. Does it matter? Eventually it'll become obvious anyway. Not sure exactly what you mean by that. Is this like the arcade head perspective of like learning the game doesn't matter and all that matters is like the final state or something? I don't really understand that. I don't agree with this general vibe that I get from the arcade crowd in that kind of area. I think that I think that learning the game is the game. I think that your experience with the game as a whole is what matters, and so you can't just judge a game based on some final state. Anyway, this is a whole different topic, but uh, try to keep things moving. A lot of rhythm games have note randomizers as a modifier, which I've always liked. Yeah, but isn't it like the note, it comes in a different lane, but not actually at a different time? Because what I like about Planet Quest and what I want rhythm games to lean into even more is like the actual rhythm. The actual rhythm is changing, right? You have to, yeah, because it feels you're feeling the same rhythm in your hands, just hitting this different notes on the same timing. Whereas in Planet Quest, it's often asking you to mix it up, which is cool, and that challenges your sight reading a lot more. You can't memorize the timings and then just be ready to switch up the notes. You have to like actually be able to sight read a rhythm, which is cool. Okay, moving on. Procedural generation. Like I said, I have talked about this a lot on the stream. I feel like it's something I come back to all the time because it's one of these things that I feel like is underappreciated. Maybe I will try to do a quick argument for it though. I'm not going to go deep on it because I feel like I talk about it all the time. You can pick any other stream, pick any other stream on this channel, and open up the transcript and Control F procedural generation or proc gen or whatever. and probably find it. But yeah, procedural generation is underappreciated. I think people hate on it because they associate it with roguelites, right? And roguelites just are often not very good, but the reasons that they're often not very good are not really related to the procedural generation. They're just not very good for other reasons. Like procedural generation, I mean, everyone loves Tetris, right? That's procedural generation. Um, and yeah, more recently, I feel like people love Spelunky. So obviously there is a way to do it right. Um, I think maybe it's hard to do right in certain ways, but yeah, and I don't know, it's complicated because there is a big spectrum here. So like caramel action, for example, it's kind of weird to call it procedural generation because the level design is not at all. The level design is completely static. You know, the obstacles, um, the layout of the level, but then every enemy spawn is random, and enemy behavior is random as well. So it feels at least procedurally generated to a large degree. And then like Spelunky, you know, it's procedurally generated, but like in chunks. There are chunks that are defined as like this is a valid chunk of level, and then we're going to put them all together. And there's probably a lot of rules about how they can be put together. Um, and then even more procedurally generated, maybe maybe it seems to me even further down the line is something like Syncopause, where there are rules about each room. Well, there's a lot of rules about what can appear on specific wands. There's a lot of there are rules about what enemies appear in a given room, and there's each room has a different rule about like how the walls spawn in and stuff like that. But for the most part, it feels very procedurally generated. It feels extremely random. It feels extremely different every run, and it feels extremely low on memorization. Um, and that's one of the things I like about procedural generation. If used correctly, it dramatically lowers the. It makes it so that memorization is a much smaller component, and it moves memorization to a later stage, right? Like in an arcade shmup, memorization feels relevant to me like immediately when I start playing it. That probably isn't the case so much for a beginner shmup player, but for me as an expert player, I don't have much room to improve at my basic dodging. So the fact that every level is, the enemy spawns are static at a particular time and all of this, like that makes it so that for me, the highest impact thing I could do from the very moment that I pick up a new arcade shmup is memorize stuff. Okay, and that feels bad. I want to get into a game and see if I like the game, see if there's see if I enjoy see if there's some other core interesting thing about the game that's going to pull me in and make me want to keep playing and make me want to invest memorization effort before I get to the memorization part. So Syncopause, on the other hand, there's or caramel action. There's so much to learn that's like high impact and that's interesting, strategic, figuring out the systems kind of stuff. Yeah, there's there's stuff that's more systemic and interesting to learn, that's going to have a higher impact, that makes it so that it doesn't feel like you have to sit down and memorize. And in caramel action, you eventually just memorize. I eventually just memorized all the level layouts naturally just by playing the game, while I was still learning all this other interesting stuff that was like, the systemic stuff that I care about, that makes me want to play a game. So yeah, it didn't really feel like effort in that case. And in Syncopause, like, yeah, there's memorization that you can do about the wand rules and stuff like that, but that is so like I didn't even really get that deep into that kind of stuff, and I have the world record in that game. So, uh, yeah, it pushes that stuff really far back to like a really high skill level where, yeah, there's like a few little things that you might have to memorize, but it's like to get a little bit of additional edge at a certain point, really deep into it. But you can get hooked on the game, and getting hooked then motivates you to care about that memorization in a way that you wouldn't in like an arcade shmup for me. Um, so there's that. There's that angle for procedural generation being good. It also just obviously adds variety, right? Um you're getting something a bit different every time, which in a game that you have to, especially in a game that you have to restart, you have to start from the beginning and do the early stages over and over again a lot. Like Splunky, like Single Pause, like whatever. Um, you're just getting variety, and variety is good. Like, this goes back to this meme, whatever that meme was that we just saw. I lost it because I don't know. Oh yeah, this one. People act like people post this and act like, oh, I'm like this is just true, right? Like it's not true with the cat example, but like it's true that with static level design, there's just less replayability. There's simply it simply is true. You want to be put in different situations and challenged in different ways, and you want yeah, you want the variety, unless if used well, right? You can imagine there are designs, like Gunvein has a roguelike mode. I do not think that is better. I do not think the Gunvein roguelike mode is better than the regular mode, because there was no design work done to make that playable. Okay, you have to, and if you took like an arcade beat 'em up and just randomized it, like that doesn't make it a good use of procedural generation. You would have to somehow you'd have to think about how to make it playable. For example, Tetris shows you the next piece that's coming, right? At least one piece that's coming at all times. You could imagine doing something like that for a randomized for a more random, for a beat 'em up with random enemy spawns, or for a shmup with randomized enemy spawns, so that you can anticipate and um, figure out, okay, because I know how this enemy works, what this enemy is going to do when it comes on screen, and I see that this other enemy is going to come on screen over here, or this enemy is still here, and the way that the bullets currently on screen have kind of pressured me, I can't really go over here. But like, you can get some kind of element of planning into it. It's kind of hard in a shmup because, like, I think it's still kind of hard to do that well in a shmup, because shmups are so much about like focusing on the minute dodging, and you can't really look all over the screen all the time in a shmup and like see, oh yeah, at this edge of the screen, this enemy's about to spawn in or whatever. But anyway, my point is, there are things that you can do if you can manage to make it playable. Randomness, procedural generation, variety, whatever, that just does increase replayability. So there's that. And then procedural generation is also just the only way to, man, I'm talking about this for so much longer than I intended to. I'm wearing myself out talking about this. It's also just the only way to get to a certain depth with certain dynamics. Okay. In a single player game, the only way to have strategy gameplay, the only way to have like the sight reading kind of gameplay, the only way to have like basically anything other than timing and precision based gameplay in a single player game is to have some amount of procedural generation. everything devolves. If it's completely static, then you just memorize everything and you figure out the perfect route. I mean, figuring out the route and the initial learning process, the early part of these games can have these different elements of strategy and whatever, but eventually it will devolve unless you have the randomness. The randomness is what makes it so that you can't just solve the game by memorizing and then it's a pure execution test. So without procedural generation, you don't have single player strategy games that go all the way deep and are still interesting at the competitive level. So I think it's just obviously S tier for that. It's also just figuring out how to play with the bag in Tetris, how the bag works, how the level generation works in Post Void, figuring out the quirks of the procedural generation and using that to your advantage. It's like it's adding more interesting systemic stuff to figure out and master into the game. Like the procedural generation algorithm itself is another interesting system to figure out once you get to a certain skill level in the game. And so it's not only taking away this boring memorization thing that you have to engage with at a certain point to keep getting better at the game. It's also adding in this other layer that is interesting if done well. So this is S plus tier. Yeah, hopefully that'll make sense. Not all kinds of games, by the way. Not saying that all kinds of games need procedural generation. Yes, every time an arcade gamer talks about the variations they derive from each playthrough, I just think y'all just want to play roguelikes, but haven't figured that out yet. Pretty much how I feel. Yeah. I will say I think procedural generation makes it harder for lower skill players to get to the point where they are engaging with the game properly and are able to see what is actually interesting about the variety instead of just seeing the variety as like novelty, right? And if that's a concern, I think you should just make static level design for like the first 5 hours of your game and then open it up into the procedural generated mode, which is like the true game, right? Like you can have a quote unquote tutorial, except it's not really, it doesn't feel like a boring tutorial. It's like, it's still fun and interesting. It's just, static to give people a little bit of onboarding into the game systems and making sure that they're ready to handle the chaos. I don't know. I think a lot of people will still struggle in any case to handle the chaos of something like Syncopause or Caramel Action. But I don't know. If you want to make a really, really deep game, I think you don't really have a choice. I think you got to go procedural generation. For a deep single player game, super deep single player, like arcadey kind of game. Antimatter Dimensions. Never heard of it. Well, memorization is fine TBH, but I think if it's a high execution game, the memorization is very base layer in terms of the enjoyment of the game. It's like, for me, it's like I can enjoy the game like without memorizing it if I just intentionally avoid doing that memorization work. but it feels like the game wants me to, right? The score, if I want to improve my score at the game, the first thing I'm going to do is usually in an arcade shmup, for example, is going to be memorization work. But then, yeah, you can get over that hump to where you have everything memorized. But my problem is I also don't like the fact that arcade shmups, typically games that are heavy on memorization like that, they also devolve into a pure execution, pure timing type of challenge at the highest level. And I'm not really interested in that anyway. So, yeah, that's kind of a different issue. Okay. Okay. QTEs, that's an easy one, right? Trying to think what would be a good QTE. I mean, okay. You could say that a good QTE is just a rhythm game. But I think that's being a little bit disingenuous about what QTEs as a trend means. You know, they typically go in these story games. It's like you know, gamers can't just sit through a cutscene. I mean, we can talk about whether cutscenes even belong in these games the vast majority of the time anyway. But gamers can't sit through cutscenes, and so we have to engage them by making them just press a button and stay on their, forcing them to feel like they have to stay on their toes and stare at the screen. It's like it's like the Clockwork Orange holding your eyeballs open kind of. It's like it feels a little bit like that. The intent behind it feels a little bit like that to me. Yeah, not all of these are current trends. Not all of these are current trends. Yeah, I'm not a huge cutscene hater the way a lot of people are, but I'm not a huge cutscene hater in theory, I should say. I'm struggling to think of good cutscene examples. Um, okay, I think we'll be happy with the F tier there and move on because it's already been almost 2 hours. Okay, and these are all going to take a long time. I think runbacks. I think runbacks are good. I understand why they exist, at least. And whenever the runback conversation happens, I never, something that I feel like people never bring. I don't even remember what the things are that people always bring up when the runback conversation always happens on social media. But the thing that I'm always wanting people to say that never gets said, it feels like, is the reason that runbacks have to exist. The most obvious reason to me is that if you, similar to what I was just saying about precision platformers, people get locked in a certain bad way and they just bang their head against the wall. If you just let them keep doing the same thing over and over again continuously with no kind of reset period, they're just going to get stuck in a certain strategic rut, and they're going to keep this. I mean, this is mostly true of more casual players. So as you get better at a game, you can argue that, you know, games targeted and designed for higher skill players shouldn't do this, but I think it's kind of a necessity to have something like this in a more mainstream kind of game. If you're targeting a wider audience, you kind of need it, because yeah, if you just let them try the boss over and over again, people have a tendency to get stuck in a rut trying the same thing over and over again when it's clearly the wrong thing, and what they need to do is reassess. And so runbacks at their best, I think, give you a little bit of space to like reset your brain. You know, I feel like a lot of us here have probably had the experience of, you're playing a game, you're stuck maybe on a puzzle or something, and then you decide to take a break, come back a couple hours later or something, and suddenly it's easy. Suddenly it just seems easy. Suddenly something else occurs to you in terms of like strategy for like how to do it, an idea. But sometimes it's just the reset helps, right? Sometimes just the reset magically helps you do it. And the run back is like a little bit of that. It's forcing a little bit of that into the game, because you can't count on players to decide to take a break at the optimal time that they really should be taking a break, right? Players, that's just not how player psychology works. So yeah, that kind of, I think that kind of reset that a runback provides makes sense. I will say that when the runbacks are difficult in their own right, or too high intensity or something in their own right, which maybe like Silk Songs are for a typical player, it maybe doesn't work as well in that way. Like if we generalize runbacks a little bit more and think about something like Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds has this really nice way of naturally working runbacks into its design, where and I think it works really well. It frequently resets what you're doing, forces you to kind of step back, maybe look at your ship log if you need to, but also just kind of have some space, have a little bit of like downtime where you can kind of zone out, relax, like mostly get back to where you were, or decide to go somewhere else. Right? Often it's also giving you having a little bit of friction and not just letting you go right back into what you were doing all the time every time you fail something. It also just gives you an opportunity to think, well, maybe I should be trying something else instead. You know, I think it's good for all these reasons, at least for the vast majority of players. Um, and maybe even for me, I feel like I might even that might even make a game comfier for me. Like it reduces the amount of like feeling that I have to design my experience for myself. You know, making something work, designing around my most monkey brained, low level, stupid psychology, it undeniably makes a game comfier, right? Even though I can usually handle the a more a game that trusts me to manage my experience a lot more than that. It's nice sometimes to play something like Silk Song or something like Outer Wilds or whatever. Yeah. And yeah, when I played like Outer Wilds, for example, it felt like the right balance for me of like a little bit of time to think about what's going on and try to piece things together for myself while I'm like flying back to where I was. And also that it brings in a little bit of like a routing component sometimes. You know, some certain like planets in that game, if you want to get back to exactly where you were, there's a little bit of like it helps you get the planets into your head, get the world layout into your head, and provides a little bit of kind of optimization challenge that comes in every once in a while and is a nice counterpoint to the more intense thinking that most of the game is made up of. Hopefully that makes sense. So I think runbacks are good. I'm also, there's also just a lot that you can do if you generalize runbacks. I'm looking at Bennett Foddy's face. He's smiling at me here and thinking about baby steps and how baby steps, it feels to me at least like it often intentionally drops you when you fail a certain challenge. It drops you off in a spot where it's now easier for you to try something else than it would be. It's easier to get to a new thing to try, an alternate path, than it would be to get back to try the same thing again. And that's interesting. I like that. I think that's a generally applicable thing that I haven't really seen, but that kind of fits into the run back thing somehow. I will say, yeah, I don't know. Part of me feels a little bit weird because it does feel a little bit mean somehow to lower skill players when you make them do a run back. I don't know. I just described why it's actually nice to lower skill players, but it's also kind of mean in a way if they get to the point where they're just trying the same thing over and over again, like way too much. But I don't know. I don't know. You can design it so that they're getting practice with the movement system in a way that's going to actually apply to the boss or whatever they're running back to. I don't know. I think it's fine. At some point, you can't design the game for a player who's like just not ready for the difficulty level of the game. Okay, so we'll call it A. It feels better than these. It's kind of borderline A B tier for me, but I'll call it A. Suck to target. Okay, I put this Cairn image here. I don't know if that's clear. I was just thinking, like, suck to target to me is more than just. It's more than just the action game. Choose which enemy you're attacking type of thing. Normally when people are thinking suck to target, they're talking about like Ninja Gaiden 4. There was a big discourse around it. Like the Batman Arkham games, apparently. Just a lot of 3D action games, because in 3D you just don't have. It's just a little bit. I guess it's just a little bit more awkward. Playing spacing games, and if you're trying to do a melee attack on a target, look, let me just say, the problem that leads designers to feel like they need to do suck to target is just, I see it as just a reason to make a 2D game instead, or like a 3D game that's like top down. A game can still have some like verticality, but like be kind of a top down perspective. Like Wonderful 101 is kind of like this. But it has like a top down perspective so that you can like do, like spacing is not a problem in beat 'em ups. Spacing is just not a problem in beat 'em ups. And choosing the right target is just not a problem. Even if you did like 360-degree aim, I think it would be fine in 2 dimensions. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I feel like the problem could be solved in other ways. Give your attacks bigger hitboxes, wider hitboxes. Change the perspective, whatever it takes. This just feels gross to me in action games. But I also think it's not devastating the way that people just think it's the worst thing ever. People think a game is automatically horrible if it has that, which it's correlated with being horrible. I think the games that have suck to target are often the games that are horrible, but they're not horrible because of suck to target. I don't think, really. It's understandable that they're trying to solve this problem in this particular way. Yeah. So yeah, it's a problem that only really affects 3D action games, and I don't really like 3D action games. Like, I don't know. I don't think, when you get down to the like abstract dynamics that I like in action games, I really think you can do it 2D, like the vast majority of the time. I don't know. There's things that you can do only in 3D, obviously, but I guess that stuff just hasn't really been explored yet, and so I don't really know what to say about it. But anyway, yeah, there's also stuff like Cairn, which is why I put this image here. In Cairn, like, you're climbing, there's like cracks on the wall that you're climbing, and you have to like, place your hand at the right spot on the top of the crack to like grab it, right? But there's a weird suck to target algorithm, or whatever you want to call it, that determines whether you actually grab onto it or not. And this is kind of the problem with suck to target in general, is that because there's this algorithm that's not really it's kind of a black box to you. You can't really understand how it's working. It's not very learnable. And it's just not the type of thing that you want to learn in a game, right? Like you want to learn how to look at the wall and figure out what what a good route is, what an effective route is going to be, and how to reach from one hold to the next and whatever. And in a 3D action game, you want to figure out like how to do target prioritization and how to pay attention to all the different things at once and how to whatever. You want to do all of these things and which moves to use in which situations. There are types of things that you want to be learning how to do in these games, and how this suck to target algorithm works is not one of these things that you really want to be learning. It's not easy to learn. The game doesn't give you good feedback on what's actually happening under the hood there. It's just a thing that's implemented to try to correct stuff, to try to correct your mistakes. But when you get to a really high level in these games, it becomes relevant. Like you want to, in a 3D action game, you want to be able to punch a particular enemy from a particular distance. So you want to be able to take advantage of the fact that the suck to target is going to help you there. And you want to know what exactly is the limit here and what can I hit this particular enemy here instead of this one or whatever. Like you end up having to learn how it works, and it's just not fun to learn, right? It's something that's supposed to be a helper, but then at high level it hurts. It becomes a pain. And Karen is the same way. Like you get to a point where you want to be able to grab onto these tiny little cracks that are like really awkward, and you have to really start thinking about getting an intuition. You have to really start trying to get an intuition for how this suck to target works, and it's just not my favorite thing. I don't know. It doesn't feel right to me. I'm gonna put a D. Yeah. I really think Karen didn't need it. Yeah, that's my impression. That's my suspicion, at least. I don't know. I'd have to. It's hard for me to say something like that confidently, but yeah, hearing the white knuckle is like that is interesting. I need to check that game out. It's also a good feeling when you get faster at the runback itself. Yeah, that's kind of related to what I was saying about the routing kind of appeal. This is the price we pay for tank controls dying. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. That's another way. That you could just do it in 3D. You know, and like I was saying, a top-down kind of perspective would be fine. Tank controls also totally fine. Also totally fine. This is not a problem in God Hand. Okay. Zach like. Very, very complex feelings. First, I will just say I've played all of these Zachtronics games. I have not played all of the whatever his new studio games. Whatever his new studio is called games. I played a little bit of Kaizen and then I refunded it. I did not like it. And I haven't played the newer one. Sorry, actually I haven't played all of the Zachtronics games. I've played all of them except the last one, Last Call BBS. I have Last Call BBS. I got the physical edition and everything. I just haven't gotten around to playing it. A lot of his games are a few of his games are pretty high up on my favorite games of all time. Specifically, Space Chem, TIS 100, and Shenzhen IO are all on my top 50 games list that I made a while back, and you can see that on my top 10 games of all time stream from not too long ago. However, it does kind of feel like he ran out of ideas for the Zach like. And I'm from the non-Zach likes I've tried, it kind of doesn't feel like other people have great ideas for them either. Recently, I tried Harmless Drudge, which is kind of stretching the definition of what a Zack-like is. But it is. I think people are calling it a Zack-like, and it is very interesting. But it didn't really work for me. It also just didn't really work. Um, but that was at least an admirable attempt to do something different in the genre, I guess. But yeah, the other ones I've played, the ones on Steam I've played, I can't even remember the name, but I just did not get the sense that they were going to be. First of all, they were kind of not as smooth to play as Zachtronics games. I think maybe there's something about this type of game that appeals to a type of designer who doesn't really get how to make a game smooth to play, or doesn't really care about like the type of guy who uses Linux, you know, that type of guy. Um, I feel like really likes is really into Zach likes, and is especially likely to make a Zach like. And there's a certain uh, smoothness that Zach eventually figured out. Like Space Kim doesn't have as much of this smoothness quality, but you know, the onboarding, the like how learnable it is, the how intuitive, the how nice the UI and intuitive it is, how just how good it feels to play. Like is it are there nice hotkeys for things, but also just you can play it by just dragging stuff around, and it just feels good. Like yeah, I don't know, as a trend, I'm struggling. There's I don't know if I think I have Prime Mover on my wish list and haven't played it yet. But I will say it's a good. I can't put it lower than B. I might put it in B. We'll see. I might move it up to A. But this is just such a nice bell curve we got going on. It's crazy. But what was I saying? Yeah, it's a nice thing that exists as an option now, which is kind of how I feel about some aspects of the Fadian thing as well. Like we just didn't really have games like with this structure before Zachtronics. I think I have to put it A tier. I don't know. No, Factorio is not a Zach like. Uh, yeah, it's an interesting structure that's kind of like between. It's kind of in between modern, normal, thinky puzzle game, quote unquote, and bro like to me, which is kind of weird to say. It doesn't necessarily look like it. It's not obvious that it's connected to bro likes in any way, but to me, it feels like a bro like in the sense that it's less about. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzly game that's less about doing this particular thing. The game is showing you this particular thing, and more about we're throwing you into this system, and the system is really interesting, and you can do a lot of stuff with it, and have at it. Right? It has that kind of feeling of just throwing you into it, not the bro like feeling of we're throwing you in the deep end. And I mean, maybe this is just the syncopause feeling, but I think even stuff like 868 hack, maybe back is better in this regard. Probably back is better in this regard. But you know, syncopause and 868 hack, for example, feel a little bit more like what's going on. You're really not holding my hand here. Whereas you know, Zach likes they have a ramp up. You know, they are escalating. They have a difficulty curve, and they have a you know, usually you're unlocking more things as the game goes on, or at least more of your tools are becoming relevant as the game goes on, and you don't have to think about them all at once in quite the same way. But at the same time, it has static level design. I think it kind of has to, but I do think this spectrum that I just described. I don't know. I'm struggling to exactly hit my issue here, but I do think that this middle ground is like not quite as good to me as like the extremes. Like when you play a static, or not static, when you play a normal thinky puzzle game, when you play The Witness, when you play Steven Sausage Roll, whatever, you're getting this really controlled experience where um, you're having fun solving the puzzles, and it's comfier because you don't have to do so much like high level planning and complex like narrowing the problem space down or something, um, or like restarting an entire puzzle when you fail, when your plan doesn't work out or whatever. It's comfier in that way, but you're getting a similar type of thinking, and then you're also getting this like communion with the designer type of thing, right? You're getting this like reading the designer's mind and reading the drawing conclusions from the level design and things like that, which is it's kind of like it's getting two types of appeal and hitting really hard on both. And then the bro likes have a different thing going on where they are very extreme in what they are really good at, which is like the depth, the because they're procedurally generated and they have scoring systems that are really strong, a core consideration, whereas the Zach like scoring systems often feel a little tacked on to me. Um, because of the procedural generation and the scoring being so core, it it helps you go deeper on understanding the gameplay systems and getting more out of them in a bro like. Um, yeah. No, so yeah, Zach likes kind of exist in a weird middle ground for me, and like it can be really interesting to try to like optimize the puzzles, but it's kind of a crapshoot how interesting it's going to be. It's like you're making up a puzzle for yourself, right? You're doing a puzzle that they didn't plan for you to do. So the game is just obviously going to be less dense with like big ideas, big interesting revelations compared to like a normal puzzle game. And then it also doesn't lead you to new revelations and like force you to learn and get better over time to the level of depth that bro likes do. Hopefully this is making sense. Like it sits in an uncomfortable middle ground for me because it has to be statically designed levels. Um, but also it's so open. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense at least to the people who have played both bro likes and the people who have played bro likes and Zach likes and normal thinky puzzle games. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, yeah. There are something like the manual in TIS 100 does. It does it's its own weird thing that's interesting in its own way, and that brings a lot to the game. And also just the system of TIS 100 is so beautiful. It's like it's amazing how that game works. Um, but yeah, I think as a trend, I'm comfortable with it in B tier. I could see myself bumping it up to A tier if I played like Prime Mover or a couple other of those ones that people have recommended to me that I haven't gotten into, and maybe those are really good. But yeah, I think as a trend, it's like I don't know. I haven't seen much good come out of it other than Zach's games, uh, but it is good that this exists. So cool. We good? Any beef? We can talk about the stuff that I ranked last week as well. Any beef with any of this? I guess I should look back through and see if I have any beef with my past self. Collectathons F tier. Contraption building D tier. Fast travel D tier. Crafting C tier. Honestly, that might feel like it belongs in D tier, but I'll leave it. Explosive barrels C tier. Deck building C tier. Hero shooters C tier. Movement platformers. I'm honestly surprised 3D movement platformers ended up that high. I don't remember my logic, but I trust myself. I trust my 2 weeks ago self more than my current self because I'm feeling terrible right now. Yeah, there. Yeah. Well, you can go back in the VOD. You can go back in the VOD for incremental games, but the TLDR is I appreciate the honesty of it, right? Compared to other games that have the same thing going on, but but also a lot of trappings disguising it. I appreciate the honesty of it. And also it's like similar to what I was saying about cozy games and stuff, like, if you're really just looking for the dopamine hit of clicking a damn cookie, like have at it, man. Here's a game for that. Now keep that out of my serious games. Genshin Impact is cool, just way too long. I can't agree. I played 1 hour of Genshin Impact and I wanted to cry. Yeah, it does look very satisfying. It does look very satisfying. Um, yeah, Fadi and A tier. Now that I've been informed that Bennett Foddy is a fan of my content, I feel like I gotta gotta give him the bump. No, we'll be honest for now. Contextual finishers, yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's fine. I think I considered putting Fadian in S tier. The problem is like the main thing I was thinking about Fadian is just like it doesn't work for anyone else. Like it's like you're rating trends and the trend is just a guy. It's just this guy over here. Like he's it just doesn't affect like no one else is really doing Fadian, okay? No one else is really doing it in the same way. I love what Benefati is up to, but I think the way that it actually affects other things, it's like they take one aspect of it and maybe do it well. I think I think for me it's just like the physicsy part of Fadian is just way too hard to execute on. Like for me even like getting over it, I I wish it were more. I wish there were more to it. More to it feels wrong, but like baby steps is like crazy physicsy and wacky, you know, wacky movement system. But it's also like learnable in a way. There's discrete lessons that you can take from messing around with it. There's a lot of discrete things that you can learn, and that is satisfying. And getting over it doesn't really have that in quite the same way. There's like a few things that you learn, but like mostly getting over it is hard in a like this is just pretty precise kind of way. I feel like I don't know. I guess I might be slandering getting over it because I haven't really played it since it came out, and I only played it through like twice. Maybe if I played it over and over again, I'd feel differently. But I feel like that's not really the type of game that I want to play over and over again. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I am kind of borderline on S and A tier, but um, I'm just like okay. Think about like Only Up. Does Only Up really have what's good about Fadian design? And then like I don't know. Like think about like physicsy friend slop games. Like you could kind of see that as part of the Fadian trend. I think they really are they really as do they really execute it on it the way that Baby Steps does? I think not for me. I don't know. Jump King. I'm actually not sure. I want to look up Jump King. When did that come out? Okay, that was 2019. Okay, so that definitely does. That it definitely is downstream from Body. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I mean that's obvious. That's obvious positive influence right there. Yeah, that's obvious positive influence. but yeah, it's also just pretty different. I don't know. I guess it is. I guess it is S tier. There's also just a lot of bad though. There's a lot of bad. There's a lot of bad. Falling all the way down, falling all the way. It's just something you have to be everything. Okay. Everything here's why I put it in A tier, and here's why I'm going to keep it in A tier. Okay? Final decision. Everything about Fadian games is something that you have to be super careful with. You can't just put falling all the way down in your games and not be an expert designer and not know what you're doing and have it work out well. And same with super physicsy movement. And we just get a lot of this slop because people don't know how to do these things well. Yeah. Secret sauce. There's a secret sauce for sure. It's a good way to put it. Well, I think Quap and Gerp are, firmly within the same kind of trend, but I don't think they're, especially Gerp, I don't think it's a big factor in terms of like where the trend is now. Okay. We can continue arguing on the Discord. Please join. I think I'm happy with it. Thanks for watching. Next week, be here. Don't miss it because I'm gonna be ranking every game I have played so far this year for the midway point. We are halfway through 2026. So yeah. See you then. Bye bye.